Okay, thank you very much. And at this, I think we are ready to go, Belinda? Oh, perfect. Okay, well, welcome again. And I hope some of you were able to join our Species Working Group Forum earlier this week. It was the second one we've had. And we talked about the use and the need for coordination within a species working group. And we'll be having those open forums to develop a community around our species working groups about every 2 months going forward, new topics for each one of those. And I hope that you have explored our website at r2rbirds.org. We've got some updated information on that and a little bit of a new look as a result of some updating that we've been doing. And hope you, if you are with a species working group, that you explore using the recovery assessment wheel or tool that's out there. And it may very well help guide some of the work that you're doing within your group. With that, I think I will turn it over to Quinn, who will introduce the presenters today, and we'll have a presentation, and then we'll be followed by a question and answer period as we have done in the past. Quinn?
Yes, thanks, Paul. I'm Quinn, the current graduate fellow, and it's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers who will be giving a talk about the black-capped petrel. Yvonne Satche is a research associate at the South Carolina Cooperative Fish and Wildlife Research Unit at Clemson University. Yvonne's research focuses on the black-capped petrel, but he also takes part in several studies of seabird and waterbird biology and ecology in the southeastern United States, Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean. He is an active member of the International Black-Capped Petrel Conservation Group, a co-chair of the Caribbean Seabird Working Group, and a member of Environmental Protection in the Caribbean, or EPIC's, Board of Directors. And Jennifer Wheeler is an independent conservation biologist associated with Birds Caribbean. Jennifer specializes in project management and partnership coordination, as well as institutional strengthening, environmental education, and interpretation. She has professional experience in both private for-profit and nonprofit environmental organizations, as well as a U.S. federal government, including U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. She has co-chaired the International Black-Capped Petrel Conservation Group since its creation in 2008. So thank you, Yvonne and Jennifer, and I will turn it over to you both for your presentation.
Thank you very much. And Yvonne and I will be tag teaming presentation, and he'll be sharing his screen. And I'll begin speaking, turn it over to him, come back to me, and then we'll jointly answer questions. I want to apologize in advance if my internet goes unstable. I live 25 miles west of the nation's capital, and yet I have terrible internet service. So on occasion, I fade out, and I hope that doesn't happen during this presentation. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Yvonne and I are really excited to share with you the story of our bird and also of our working group. We are presenting on behalf of a much larger team. The current immediate planning team is listed here on the cover slide, but there are many, many others who have been instrumental in getting us to where we are. And we hope there will be many more to come that join the team to help out with the black-capped petrel conservation. So again, Yvonne and I are going to tag team. I'll start out with a quick species and working group introduction. Since this is an R2R webinar, we're going to spend some time sort of explaining how the working group came about and what characterizes us now. Then I will turn it over to Yvonne, who will explain all the great stuff we've learned about the species. And we'll come back to the current conservation plan and our strategies to address threats and to monitor success. And then again, we'll answer we'll quickly touch on some issues that are in front of us, what the future holds, and then we'll have Q&A. So to begin, Yvonne, can you turn to slide 2, please? All right, so the black-capped petrel, Pterodroma hasitata, it's a medium-sized pelagic seabird. Pelagic means that it spends its life at sea, almost the entirety of its life, and it comes to land only to breed, usually under the cover of darkness. So you can see that it's one of 5 pterodromas still existing in the Atlantic, and it's the only one in the Caribbean that's extant in the actual Caribbean basin. The name Pterodroma has that group of birds has a nickname, gadfly petrels, and it's because of its speedy weaving flight, as if it's evading flies. And our species has a nickname as well, the black-capped petrel. We call it the diablotin, the little devil. And that's due to its eerie cries that you hear in the night sky. And I'll just play for a second or two. So if this were a couple hundred years ago and you were superstitious and you heard that warbling out in the sky above you, you might think it was a demon or a witch as well. Okay, next slide, please. So the black-capped petrel, like so many petrel island nesting seabirds, underwent population crashes when humans showed up in the islands, along with their introduced mammals, cats, rats, pigs, mongoose, etc. And because of this, the species is currently on the listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List. The criteria, it's very small population, it's fragmented, and it appears to be declining both its breeding range and population numbers. Yvonne will explain how it's already been extirpated from some of the islands and how declines are likely continuing. In any case, because of this status, it meets the definition of a tipping point species for Road to Recovery. Road to Recovery team and we believe that it requires immediate focused scientific action to make sure we know what's causing the threats or what are the threats and developing strategies for recovery. The status of the bird, it breeds only in the Caribbean, but again, Yvonne will explain how there's a very strong nexus with the US because of its foraging range. And so it's really a bird shared by many, and it has specific protections in the US. It falls under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. It was recently listed as endangered under the ESA, but it only breeds outside of the US. And currently we know it to breed in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, Haiti and in Dominica, where it is probably breeding, it has a protected status. In the other islands where it is breeding, probable or suspected as breeding, it has protection in the degree that all these breeding areas are in protected areas. In any case, recovering this species does require international engagement because of its range. And this international engagement, of course, is complicated by the socioeconomic and political situation in various countries. And we'll talk about that more later. Next slide, please. So turn the clock back, and the petrel was very abundant in the Caribbean. There are records of its superabundance and ease of harvest, pulling chicks from burrows for Easter feasts, and the calls echoing throughout the air. But as I mentioned, things began to fall apart. In the 1800s, it was present, but then we started seeing it wink out. The last confirmed record, Guadeloupe, was 1850. The last confirmed record in Dominica was 1862. things keep going poorly, and by 1930, it's considered extinct. And there it was. But thanks to some very dedicated, perhaps obsessed individuals, the bird was rediscovered. The picture here is of David Wingate, who, as a teenager, helped rediscover the Bermuda petrel in Bermuda and became obsessed with finding the black-capped petrel in Haiti and in Dominica, and did manage to do that. In 1963, an extensive visit to Haiti, he found birds, and he found them calling in the night and actually put hands on some birds when they were attracted to his lights. And you see him here pictured with the living Diablo 10. So it was confirmed, but then decades began to pass, and nobody really reported much until the 80s, when some folks with USAID were doing some surveys and did report that they were hearing birds as well. In the next decade or so, Yvonne, next dot, please, work off the Outer Banks in North Carolina by David Lee and Chris Haney and others, it became very obvious that there were still quite a few petrels out there, and they were seen in abundance at a high density in an area adjoining the Gulf Stream. Yvonne will talk more about that. But seeing all those birds at sea, I think, prompted, again, the need to go find this bird's breeding locations, specific breeding locations. So we knew there were birds foraging off the coast of North Carolina. We knew they'd been heard on various Caribbean islands. So let's go down and find them. And another dedicated team out of North Carolina led an expedition and did rediscover or discover an active burrow in 2002. They knew it was active by various tricks you do to mark the entrance of the burrow, but they did not find any chicks inside, nor did they find any other nests. So there we were in 2002. Excited, we knew we had burrow location, but what else? So how did things really break open? I think a lot of times it's serendipity. And if you were on this call when we first started, it's also just people being in the right place in the right time and being really, really interested. And Jim Getz was one of those people. And he took himself down to Haiti in the mid 2000s, so 2006, 2007, and went listening for birds. And he found them in abundance and came back and reported it to various individuals. And so at that time, the American Bird Conservancy had I would say, a very strong seabird lead in Jessica Hardesty. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Southeast region had a strong migratory bird biologist in Stephanie Melvin. And my office at that time was just unfolding a strategy called the focal species strategy, which meant we had money for single species work. And all those things coming together kind of activated and inflamed, I guess, a group of people that said we need to get really serious about getting people on the ground regularly to advance the conservation of species. So thanks to people coming together, thanks to a continuous, modest, but extremely important flow of money out of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Southeast region, as well as some other pops up of money from various agencies and organizations. We had a meeting piggybacking on the Bicknell's thrush in Santo Domingo in 2010. And we pulled together a plan in 2011 and 2012. So you can see the covers of the report from the meeting and the plan. And I think that inspired teams on the ground, one nonprofit called Grupo Jaragua, and also the Audubon Society in Haiti, to spend more time in the field, And what happened is we grew from one nest to today, 12 years later, over 140. So if you click the button, Yvonne will see this little arrow zoom in, and it was this sort of international interest and planning, but it was the on the ground hard work that really brought the bird to light. And the hard work, and this is hard work, this is death defying rock scaling and very dangerous roads and very cool and wet or sometimes super hot conditions. So it can't be overstated the importance of the technicians to the knowledge we've earned about petrels. Next slide, please. So I am going to turn it over to Yvonne to describe all that's been learned in these last 12 years, but I wanted to quickly kind of go over why I think our species working group has functioned well. I mean, obviously finding new and exciting things out about petrels every year would stimulate action, but I think there's also some characteristics that kept us together and kept us productive since 2008. And one, I think I mentioned this before, we kind of had this slow, modest, but steady funding from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Southeast region. Every now and then we would get a grant that was more substantial, but short-term, but got us over to new achievements, research money from USGS or humanitarian recovery money from a group called Biopama. We also saw new people show up with some money. Adam Brown from EPIC arrived with a strong interest in radar studies, having worked on marbled murrelet. And so we just kind of had this gathering of interested people and timely grants that kept us moving along, building on this sort of base funding we had from the service. I think that we were generally, or are generally, a welcoming group. If someone has something to offer, they're invited to the table to share, to contribute. When we entered into our most recent planning effort, we did create an MOU to make sure that people understood the proper way to treat our shared information, because there are, you know, careers and reputations at stake, but yet we're all working together to produce the data, and we all want to use it for the benefit of the birds. So we did have an MOU put together for that. We formalized, we got ourselves a logo. We had a small competition across the Caribbean and gave ourselves a name, the International Black-Capped Petrel Conservation Group. We decided to piggyback on Birds Caribbean, the nonprofit Birds Caribbean, because it has a large international conference every other year. So we meet there. And ever since 2021, we've had monthly calls. And then I guess the last thing I would mention, only because it was a topic of the recent R2R forum, is we did not have during this time, really any paid coordinator. There was no pay for anyone's salary to coordinate or actually do really any of the work. It was all project funds, and organizations or individuals donated their time. My role, for example, I was an employee of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in the beginning years, but have been volunteering my time for the last decade. And it's just been a luxury to do this and a privilege. But we have managed to carry on without a paid staff coordinator. So that's our species working group. And Yvonne, why don't you tell the crowd about our awesome bird?
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, I will start where we left in the timeline. So the first chick was observed about 10 years after the first nest was located. So a lot of Grupo Jaragua helped with with Heidi Audubon and Jim Getz, kept looking for the petrel in Dominican Republic and bordering Haiti and they finally found the first chick in 2011 in the border area of Haiti and Dominican Republic. That led to the first conservation plan that Jennifer talked about. And then also at the same time, Ted Simon had done the research and the searches in the 2000s and found the first nest. And Dave Lee and Chris Haney published a monograph really to summarize all the information known on the species until then. And that was really a major step for the species. It was really one place where all the information was coalesced into one place and really showed what was there and what was needed. Following that, the first satellite tracking was also instrumental, not only in building capacity and putting the black-cap petrel more on a research map, but also in showing that although the hotspot of marine use was the Gulf Stream off the coast of the US, chick-rearing adults were commuting to the Caribbean Sea, to the north of Colombia and Venezuela, to the Guajira Peninsula, to forage. And that really showed the importance of the Caribbean Sea as a foraging area. At the same time, Adam Brown at EPIC did the radar surveys throughout what was supposed to be the terrestrial range, except Cuba for more political reasons, unfortunately. And that provided the baseline for population size for the species. In 2018, that's when the Fish and Wildlife proposed the species as threatened under the ASA listing. So I just want to thank all the work that our colleagues at Fish and Wildlife have done, all the effort they've gone to provide information for that listing and for all the work. Kay London and Tom White really did a lot of work to put everything together for SSAs. And that same year, a new nesting area was located in Dominican Republic and Valle Nuevo. In 2020, we did a habitat modeling that really showed that the suitable habitat was small for the species and limited. And I'll talk a bit more about it later. I wanted to put it there because it was actually an important point for the endangered listing that came this year. Conservation plan number 2 happened in 2021. Jennifer will discuss that in details later. At the same time, radar surveys showed a decline in population, what appeared to be a decline in population. And then eventually, in January of this year, the species is listed as endangered in the US. But from basically from 2002 or 2010s all the way to now, I want to highlight that there is monitoring that's being done almost every year by our colleagues in Dominican Republic, Grupo Jarago, and also in Haiti through EPIC, now with Action pour la Conservation de l'écologie en Haïti. Sorry. So they're keep doing the work year after year and the difficult field conditions there with the limited funding. So going back to the species and really describing quickly the biology of the bird, something of importance is that there are morphotypes in that species. There's a pale form, which is bigger, heavier, and a dark form, which is smaller, and there are intermediates in between. There are genetic differences and also distinct distributions, non-breeding distributions at sea. We show that their breeding range overlaps, but the pale form seems to be nesting about a month earlier than the dark form. And that's important because it could be split as 2 different species that would have impact for the conservation, or at least conservation status of the species. So the breeding range, the confirmed locations where we have found nests are the green locations. So QO3 in Haiti, and then 3 in the Dominican Republic. The species is highly probable in one area in Western Haiti, as well in Dominica, where birds have been found grounded. And then radar survey picked up petrel-like targets in Dominica. It's suspected, I would say highly suspected in Cuba, because our colleagues there do coastal surveys and hear the petrels flying inland at dusk. But no nests have been found, and also suspected in Guadeloupe and Jamaica. The annual cycle, very quickly, so it's a pelagic seabird. It spends a lot of time at sea. the birds come back in November to the burrow to mate and do pair bonding and clean up the burrow. There is a pre-laying exodus where the females goes at sea and stocks up some energy. Laying occurs in around mid-January and then fledging around late June to mid-July. So it's a very protracted breeding season for a seabird. And then they go back at sea. The pale form, as I mentioned, breeds about a month earlier. So they have already fledged in Balienweb where it nests. The terrestrial habitat, what we know of it is that there seems to be plasticity and the habitat that's being chosen. So they can nest in very strong slopes, but also flatter ridgelines in dense understory of cloud forest, but also an area that like the grassy ones there that have been deforested, now turned to grassland. The microhabitat is about the same as whatever is available as long and deep crevices, karstic crevices and limestones, for example, or under tree roots or down tree ferns that have been downed. But despite this apparent plasticity, there is limited suitable habitat, whether in Hispaniola, in black on the map, or at the Caribbean scale as well. So the hotter the color, the more suitable the habitat. At sea, the marine range extends over 3 basins. So the hotspot was thought to be and still seems to be off the Gulf Stream of North Carolina, South Carolina. That's where birds are seen year-round. The Caribbean Sea was added to that range based on radar survey, satellite tracking data, but also at-sea surveys and opportunistic confirmation from that area. And very recently, we proposed to add the Northern Gulf of Mexico based on at-sea surveys through the GoMaps program, because black-cap petrels were observed there regularly during that program and seem to be using that basin regularly as well. You may recall that there are 2 morphotypes, and here we show what appears to be the distinction in non-breeding distribution with statistically significant distribution, with the pale form being further north and pelagic, and the dark form more in what was the historical hotspot closer to the shelf break. In terms of population estimate, it's quite a wide range of estimates. Simon Sedol in the monograph is estimated between 1,000 and 2,000. BirdLife, about 4,000 individuals. The breeding population estimated between 500 and 1,000 pairs, which are grouped into 3 to 5 subpopulations, depending on how we count them. The largest one, though, seems to be the La Visite escarpment in Haiti, very strong, steep slopes and cliffs there, which could host between a half and a quarter of the population. But what we know about 140 nests have been located after about 10 years or more of hard work. So it's hard work to find them. And what we can project is a downward trend for the next 100 years. And that trend is basically due to threats, mostly due to threats on land. So during our work on the conservation plan, we ranked and assessed threats, and agricultural expansion by removing habitat is the major threat. Forest fire, whether they're natural in the pine forests of Hispaniola or induced by humans for agriculture, have a direct impact on mortality, as well as introduced predators, mostly dogs and mongoose, but also cats, rats, pigs, feral pigs are present. And then something that's a bit harder to assess and quantify is the threats induced by light attraction to bright lights, whether in villages, on the flyways, or around telecommunication towers, which are placed on the highest mountains for broadcast, but which is also where black-cap petrel happen to nest. Most of those towers are cable, they have cables, and petrel collide with those cables, and usually either died or are depredated. At sea, something to think about, and that was not on my radar personally, but that Todd Haas quantified is the threat caused by hurricanes. With climate change, hurricane season is going to extend. Hurricane frequency is going to increase, and as well intensity. And I don't know if you can see my pointer here, but Petrels are using that hotspot of the eastern US, and those hurricanes hitting the US are pushing Petrels inland. That would not be a very big issue if the population were sizable. But given the small population size we have, even a small number of Petrels being pushed inland and dying inland can have an effect on the population. Marine energy, which I think is very specific to that species of Pterodroma. Globally, I think it might be the only Pterodroma really overlapping and being exposed to marine energy as much as the black-cap petrel. The gray location on that map are satellite tracking locations for the black-cap petrel. The pink ones are oil and gas platforms, and the blue outlines are proposed or already in place wind energy areas. So the petrel overlaps or are within we have locations within 3 to 5 kilometers of oil rigs. And here the issues could be light attraction, collision, displacement, also contaminant, and plastic pollution is likely an issue. And finally, bycatch could be an issue for that species. So I just checked the time and I see that we are moving. So I will just go quickly on that impact on population effect. So of the 140 nests, about 30 to 9,500 are monitored each year. And what we see through that data set is a very variable reproductive success, whether it's due by predation of chicks and adults or nest abandonment, which is something we're seeing more and more in recent years, and that we're still trying to understand. So that was the update on the biological side of on the biology of the species, and now I'll give Jennifer will talk back about the group and conservation plan.
Thanks, Yvonne. So as he just described, we had a wealth of new information as a result of our now continual presence in the field and multiple research projects. And if you recall, the 2012 action plan, the bulk of it was written before we even had located a single nest or single chick. And so the original plan, the 2012, sort of focused on interventions, things that around the world people were doing for petrels, but it was all hypothetical because we had not been able to actually study any threats. But then 10 years later, we now had knowledge of petrels and knowledge of the sites in which they were breeding. We had the opportunities and to study the threats and actually take action. We had to decide which of the threats were the most significant and understand the factors driving those threats. In short, we had the ability to do a much richer plan. And so we took the opportunity, if you can hit the arrows, Yvonne, that COVID provided, really. The pandemic kept us all at home, and it gave us some more time, some luxury really to spend time in long conversation. And in the last decade, in the 2014, 15, 16 time, Jim Getz, myself, some others had really begun to immerse ourselves in the conservation standards, formerly called the Open Standards for the Practice of Conservation. And this methodology proved very helpful to us because I think the main thing was it drew out information. We'd all been talking and sharing, but this really brought out values, opinions, assumptions that maybe had not been articulated before. Jim acted as our coach, having taken coach training. And again, with COVID, we were able to spend a whole lot of time on Zoom, and we would have regular 1 to 2 hour long meetings each week to generate the 2021 plan cover you see here. Next slide, please. One of the parts of the plan was to do some population viability analyses, and using the newly discovered demographic information and the information on the impact of threats, we modeled various scenarios where these threats were addressed. And it came to light that no single strategy, the removal of any single threat would still not result in a recovery. But if we could achieve a positive population trajectory if we managed to succeed at a number of strategies at the same time. So even though we did rank threats, we, in a way, could not rank strategies because they were all important, the 9 that we came up with. And so I will quickly go over these strategies. 3 of them are enabling in the plan, are enabling. Instead of directly addressing a threat, they set up the context to allow us the other strategies to occur. And they also are strategies that are, instead of addressing threats, provide opportunity. And the 3 here, build local capacity. We cannot, well, I'll talk about this more in a second. Build local capacity, locate and characterize nest sites. Obviously, we need to find the petrels in order to protect them, and they are very difficult to locate. As Yvonne mentioned, we've not been able to locate nests in Cuba because there's not been much ability to do expeditions there. But it's crucially important we discover where these petrels are if we are to act in their benefit. And then another enabling strategy is to deploy restoration techniques of attraction to new locations or translocation, techniques that have been tried with other seabirds around the world, but not yet with this species. So since this is an R2R webinar, R2R has really made it clear to all of us that the social dimension, the human dimension, the social aspects of conservation must not be neglected. And in the case of black-capped petrel, this is, of course, crucially true. The local individuals and local organizations are the backbone of the conservation. Given where this species is breeding, this is a long-term capacity building effort. We need to think about 25, 50 years of growing not only field knowledge. We don't just need people with the abilities to nest search and monitor, but we need the organizations to continue to grow in their leadership role, project managing, finding project funding, developing research programs embedded in the countries. So we believe that in addition to what you might see illustrated here, like technical exchanges in the field, we need to bring up the younger generations of conservationists. We need to encourage graduate study by nationals, Peruvian nationals, as well as this very simple things of finding more equipment like motorbikes to do field work. So it's at all levels of capacity that we need to build. So that's strategy 1 out of 3 enabling strategies. And then 6 additional strategies in the plan that directly address threats. You can see here what they are. Some are pretty straightforward. They're not easy, but they're sort of straightforward. Reducing predator pressure, reducing collisions and groundings. And then there are those that are really all about people. The in Hispaniola, on the Haiti side in particular, this petrel lives within human communities, and it is the fate of the human community that will determine the fate of the petrel. So strategy 6 is about supporting the communities right on the border, where we have significant colonies. Strategy 7 is, can't even see my own strategies, discovering the situation on the La Visite Ridge, one of we believe the hotspot for black-capped petrels in the world. And there's a lot going on up on that ridge. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But again, that's all about people, finding out what the communities are struggling with. Another strategy is on the Dominican Republic side. All these birds occur in parks, and so the Park Service in the Dominican Republic, understanding their management, helping them understand the petrel's needs when it comes to management is a key strategy. So again, working with people rather than the bird. And then finally, our strategy of addressing marine threats. Our planning team is made up of biologists from different organizations, but without the reach, we are not policymakers, we are not major industry. And so instead, what our group can do, the way we've defined this strategy, is to reach those other bodies to make the major policy and industry decisions that can address the threats. So next slide, just a word again on the work on the border. This colony, the colony on the border, it's a remnant forest that has not yet been degraded. And the miracle of it is that the communities nearby actually have some ability to control what goes on in that forest. While there isn't formal land tenure, there is local stability within the community. And so our strategies there have mostly to do with helping that community to convert to more sustainable practices for agriculture, to develop different livelihoods, to look at different more sustainable practices in terms of bringing an income to the village, and at the same time educating the community about the resource that they have in their backyard. This kind of work is mostly done through partners. I have logos of 3 there. Plant with Purpose is an international sustainability organization. CESAL is a similar a Spanish humanitarian group, and GIZ is the German Development Agency. Those are groups that have human welfare as their direct mission, and we partner with them to see that has the benefits, or help them understand the benefits that will accrue to the petrel as the communities become more secure. Next slide, please. The La Visite Ridge, well on the other side of Haiti, unfortunately does not have that situation yet. The communities there are much less integrated. There's a lot more entry from many different directions. It's possible there's more socioeconomic stress, if that's at all possible, than on the border. And our strategy there, while unfortunately is kind of on hold given the unrest in Haiti, is to just more and more try to find social interventions that will help forestall the degradation of the environment by desperate people. So Jim Getz could talk for years about this, so I won't, but I just wanted to emphasize again another strategy that has really more to do with people than with birds. Next slide, please. How do we know if this is all working? Well, we have ultimate measures. We want to determine if the population of petrels is, what's its trajectory. We want to determine reproductive success at the nest sites. We want to measure habitat intactness. Is there loss, degradation? Again, we want to locate where all these species are, all these individual birds are across their range. And then there's some other population measures like breeder return rate, so adult survivorship, breeding vocal activity, which will again help us give an index to population, and then colony occupancy, again tracking the return and success of various colonies as a whole. So we have some little, back 1 second, please, little icons there that are our current ability to determine these measures or these ecological attributes, and some have remained stable. As Yvonne mentioned, reproductive success has been all over the place, and we do believe that there's still a decline in population. And for 3 of the measures, we do not have the data yet to even make a call. Next slide, please. So what's next? Well, a lot of things are next. These bubbles give you a sense of some of our top priorities for research, for conservation, and for the working group. We think of, our next steps in these types of categories because they all need to occur. It's a little bit like the wheel that R2R has promoted, a self-assessment. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to run the wheel, the R2R recovery progress wheel for our species for this webinar, but it is the kind of tool, the kind of thinking that we've been using to look at how we're doing on various fronts, various myriad fronts, not only what we need to know scientifically or for management, but also to keep working productively as a working group. Next slide. So to close out, I'd say that in front of us right now, some of the things on our minds that we will need to wrestle with is that there's going to be project leadership turnover. The leader in the Group of Aragua field team is at retirement age. We have important members of the planning committee that are moving on to different stages in their career. So without an embedded coordinator position in a certain organization, we don't have a succession plan. I'm not sure we needed an embedded working group coordinator, but we still do need a succession plan for turning over important roles in the group. Haiti's problems are right now at a very high level. And so that is an issue for us. We are unable to do a lot of the things we've wanted to do or been able to do in the past. So things are kind of at a standstill in Haiti. Funding, the recovery of an endangered species, the listing was thrilling to us, but it did not come with a source of funding because the recovery grants for endangered species do not apply to species breeding outside of the US. With no jurisdiction, the grants program won't send money outside the country. It's not how it works. So that's a big deal for us. Social science, as you saw, it's really important to a number of our strategies. And our team is not made up of social sciences scientists. Jim is becoming one, but we would love some insights on how to measure the progress of our social interventions. And then finally, we are always looking for ways to increase the visibility of our species. And for that reason, we're very thankful that R2R has given us this opportunity to present on the Petrel and on the International Black-Capped Petrel Conservation Group. Next slide. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope we left enough for at least a few questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer and Yvonne, for a wonderful presentation. I've learned so much about the Petrel today. We're happy to open up the floor for questions. You can ask them by audio, turn on your video. You can also post in the chat, and we have the opportunity to do this in English and Spanish. So I'll open the floor to questions.
Is there a place for raising a hand, or do I just jump in?
Just jump on in. There is
Go
a place,
ahead, Chuck.
go ahead.
There is a place, Chuck, but you have the right to come right in.
All right, Paul, thanks a lot. I'm glad that y'all put this together. Thank you so much. Jennifer, one of the questions I had is that while there may not be automatic funding associated with the endangered species program, things are funded for species that migrate and end up in different countries. from a breeding species standpoint, Kirtlands where there was a lot of work done in the Bahamas. That was funded by somebody. And I'm also thinking have you all reached out to international affairs within the Fish and Wildlife Service? And so I see your head saying yes, and they said no.
Well, yes and no. So the listing, as you know, is very recent. And so we're mobilizing our strategy to look into forms of funding. One of the things about absolutely understanding full life cycle and sending funding to where it's needed in the regardless of a species range was recognized years ago. And the Neotropical Migratory Bird Conservation Act has been very, very important for the conservation of migratory birds outside of the US. Unfortunately, the black-capped petrel doesn't fit the definition, which very coarsely is breeds north, winters south. The Caribbean seabirds in general do not make that list in general.
Okay.
So black-capped petrel or the Audubon shearwater or any of the other tropical breeding species, even though they're a shared species, they don't make the neotrop list. International affairs, absolutely, we're going to look to them. We've already started that discussion with Tom White and exploring with the advent of the NMBCA in the Fish and Wildlife Service. International affairs has generally not turned away, but focused on non-bird conservation. But given the seabird's unique status as falling through the cracks as a non-NMBCA bird, we're definitely going to be looking to international affairs. And of course, international affairs has incredible track record with capacity building and training. And
Right.
so we could look to them for the social-based strategies.
Okay. One other thought, it may be a stretch, but with the actual listing, now I would suspect that folks involved with wind turbine development will take more special attention to this species. They should have already been paying attention to Bermuda petrel, to how, but it's hard to know. But there may be opportunities there for them to assist with better understanding of the population status and improving the breeding success, given that there may be some impacts they need to mitigate for. So that's another thought. I had also a question for Yvonne. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your first name correctly after all this time. On the pale form, how many nests have you actually found occupied by pale forms on I guess the Dominican Republic or Hispaniola?
Yeah, so all of them would be in Valle Nuevo, and there the count is about 30. There are about 30 nests. We thought all of them were the pale form. It's hard to tell though, because as you know, we're using camera trap photos, and those are infrared, so you don't see the detail very well. But this year we actually went there to track some birds, and we found a dark form nesting there in Valle Nuevo, which is why I was talking about overlap and nesting areas.
But mostly it's just at that one location you've been finding the pale forms.
Yeah, and although it might be a bit, we're thinking about it, but Ernst Rupp and Grupo Jaragua, we have it's hard to catch a bird and get them in daylight, of course. So that thinking is also based on the fact that they're breeding earlier than a dark form. So it's both looking at chromatrap pictures with the caveat that it's infrared data, imagery, spectrum, sorry, and the fact that they're nesting earlier.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you mentioned, sorry, looking at offshore wind as a source of potential funding. So we've been in touch with people at Fish and Wildlife that are working on this. I see Katie Matthews there and others. And also maybe as a source of funding for mitigation coming directly from the industry towards
Right.
international.
Thank you. Great presentation. Thank you.
Any other questions? I was curious because you said that they were genetically distinct. Has anyone looked at the genetic diversity of the population, or maybe like the genetic effective population size to get another, I guess, another metric for population size?
Not looking at genetics and genetic differences, yes, that was done using COI markers. Now it's being done using genomics, which provide a newer, better understanding of it. It's being done right now. Using genomics or genetics to infer population size, unfortunately, we're limited by the data, like the samples. Capturing birds at locations is hard. You could get some feathers from the nest sometimes. That's very limiting. And then at sea, you're also limited by the population you're sampling. As we showed using tracking, those population may be using different areas or seem to be using different areas. So if you catch them more easily off Cape Hatteras because it's closer, and they're more of a hotspot, then you're subsampling that population and not looking at the other population. So it's on our mind. We're thinking about it, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The difference in the timing of their phenology is pretty cool.
Yeah. And I wanted to mention, Jennifer mentioned that we're in need of social science for this species. And so if there are any social scientists here in this webinar, please raise your hand.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Holland. I'm the social scientist with Road to Recovery. So Jennifer, I just sent you a message. Would love to connect with the group and chat more about evaluating those social science efforts and how I might be able to be supportive.
Thank you very much, Katie.
When will we be able to read the chats after the webinar? I see there are a lot of comments and don't have time to read them all. Are you saving them?
I think, Paul, before you get off the call, you'll be able to you'll have the option to save the chat.
Okay, I will do that. I will do that and send them to you, Yvonne and Jennifer.
Great, thank you.
And Jim Getz has his hand up now.
Yeah, just real quick, I want to acknowledge Jennifer's work in this. Since 2007, when she and Dean Demarest first sent some funding my way, which got things rolling, at least for my part in this. And since then, she's really helped with coordinating with all three plans that we had and has been very much our den mother and helped us keep together, even having monthly meetings, which is incredible. And we're doing it. So thanks so much, Jennifer.
Thank you. It's been a privilege and an honor. Great people, great bird. And one of these days I'll actually see one of their nesting sites. Hasn't happened yet. No, seriously, in all seriousness, this is a really, I think the reason that this working group has worked out is it's a very congenial and dedicated group of people. And the fact that it is so tied to human welfare, I think makes it even more compelling and rewarding to work on. You're helping a bird at the same time you're helping people. And if you're helping people, you're helping a bird. And so again, I welcome anyone's interest in this species, ideas, engagement. So yeah, please get in touch with us. Adrian Tosas has put our working group page up, and another plea, I guess, is love more assistance with visibility. We also have the website diablo10.org, but we do not have people dedicated to communications, though we like to piggyback on various organizations for that. We don't have anyone that's especially assigned to that within our group. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to share with this community.
Yeah, thank you so much again for the presentation. And if anyone wants to connect with you afterwards, I'm sure that I know Katie's going to reach out, and hopefully we can advance the conservation work for the black-capped petrel.
Thank you, Quinn. Thank you, Jennifer and Yvonne. It was an excellent presentation and a good exchange of ideas and suggestions. We appreciate that. That's what we're trying to encourage here. So thank you very, very much. And for everybody who's still on, or anybody, we welcome suggestions on how to improve and future presentations or ideas that you may have that we might spotlight. So feel free to reach out to us through our website. You can get our email contact information through r2rbirds.org, and I encourage you to go there and see any of the past webinars or other workshops or engagement sessions that we have put up on the website. Thanks again. Glad you all could join us, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
So Yvonne, I think you can actually save the chat yourself if you see that. Otherwise, I'll do it for you if you need it.
No, I saw the comment. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I
Perfect.
didn't know about that.
Great. Thanks again, Jennifer. Great to see you. The presentation was excellent. And Quinn, as always, a great moderator. So thanks again. And we will see you later. And hopefully next time we'll see more petrels, right? There'll be more petrels. And we're going to get you to see, one, Jennifer. That's got to be on your goal, right?
Well, I was able to actually handle one caught
Oh,
at
okay.
sea.
Oh, okay.
But I've never been up into their colonies. Plans to go to Haiti were jettisoned a couple of years ago, and then the DR, the timing has never worked out. But one of these days.
Well, be careful when you go, because it looks like
Yes.
those one slip and it might not end too well.
Yeah, I got to practice my scrambling skills. Yeah.
All right,
But
take care.
Jennifer came to Dominica to search for petrels a few times.
Yes.
So
Yvonne nearly killed me. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Hikes in the middle of the night on steep, muddy, pouring rain trails. Yeah.
those are me. That was Dominica.
Yes. Dominica nearly killed me. That's right.
Before I go, I want to thank Esmeralda to make the connection. Reach out to us first. So thank you.